So today we're working on this 2010 Buick LaCrosse. It's got a 3.6 liter engine in it. The customer brought it in with a no crank, no start condition. It's already been taken into another shop, and that shop told them that there was an electrical issue, and this was after they had already replaced the starter motor and this 300 amp fuse over here on top of the battery. Okay, so we have it here. We tried cranking it and all we hear is a clicking from the solenoid. So we've already done a few tests, and during those tests we blew that 300 amp fuse again. Okay, so you could think that this is an electrical issue, but there's other things that could blow a fuse. We could have high amperage being drawn from that starter motor that could do the same thing. So what we wanted to do was a battery starting charging system test like we would normally do on a running vehicle. Ultimately, we just wanted to know how many amps is that starter pulling and how many volts is the battery dropping to while doing that, just to see if that battery's still good. So since we blew that 300 amp fuse, what I've done is I've temporarily moved this cable over so that we're bypassing that fuse. And now we're going to hook up our picoscope with the amp clamp on the battery cable and the leads on the battery terminals, and we'll go ahead and figure out how many amps this thing's pulling. Okay, so we were able to get our reading on our picoscope. Again, we had our 600 amp clamp on the negative battery cable, and we had our leads on the positive and negative of the battery so we could get our voltage reading. You'll notice that before we started cranking, we were over 12 volts, so we were fully charged there. And when we initially started cranking, we only dropped right here to about, let's measure that real quick. Only dropped to 9 volts, so that battery was doing a pretty dang good job. Right now, the amps, when we initially started cranking, shot off our screen, so we're above 600 amps here. But then it started cranking pretty slow, and right here, our average cranking was around 460 amps, and then it kind of shot up again. So we're really high on our amperage here. I don't think we're dealing with an electrical issue like the other shop was telling us. This to me looks like some physical resistance causing that starter motor to have to work really hard to turn. Okay, now after we did this test, we were not able to crank it anymore, and we repeated the test one more time, and we could still hear that solenoid clicking. Take a look at this. Second test, we're jumping off the screen well above 600 amps. Our battery's still maintaining above 8 volts there, but yeah, I don't think we're going after an electrical issue here. We're gonna start looking into something being seized. Okay, so after we saw that high amperage draw from the starter motor, we came back to the engine. We removed the serpentine belt down here to check all of our pulleys to make sure nothing was seized. And then we put a breaker bar on our crankshaft pulley, and we were putting well over 200 foot-pounds of torque on that thing trying to get it to rotate, and nothing budged at all. So we're dealing with a seized engine here, not an electrical issue like the other shop had indicated. So just because you're blowing these 300 amp fuses does not necessarily mean you have an electrical issue. You could be dealing with high amperage in the circuit caused by physical resistance.